The chances are high you've flown the 787 in FlightGear at least once. But brace yourself, it has now become better than you thought it would ever be. The 787 is the aircraft of February. The Boeing 787 has been around in FlightGear for a few years already, but only recently, developers Omega 95 and Redneck decided to make some adjustments to the plane's cockpit. However, their project turned out to grow bigger than they expected. More developers from the FlightGear community joined, and recently they released their work-in-progress version of the 787. This plane was almost entirely rebuilt. Only the original base model and liveries are still the same. Speaking of the model, let's take a close look at that. As you might be familiar with this plane, I won't go into detail about the exterior of this plane. You know it looks good, but some of the liveries could be more detailed. So let's take a look at the interior model of this 787. The cockpit of this plane is just gorgeous. It has many amazingly detailed instruments, which are controllable just like in the real cockpit. From the head-up display to the control display unit and the electronic flight bag, this plane has an entirely new cockpit. Each of these instruments have their own tutorial section on the FlightGear wiki page, so definitely check that out if you want to control this plane like a real pilot. This plane is one of the few airliners in FlightGear to have such an advanced cockpit, and keep in mind that this is still in development. The flight dynamics of the Boeing 787-8 in FlightGear are quite close to the real thing. The developers looked at accurate analysis data of real 787-8 flights, and as far as I can tell, the results are great. The plane handles nicely, but sometimes it feels a lot different than other airliners in FlightGear. That's because this plane is the first in FlightGear to use realistically simulated fly-by-wire systems. This technique is used in many modern airliners, and to describe it very briefly, it's a system that sort of helps the pilot by, for example, making it impossible to make steep turns or fly faster than the speed limits. Parts of the fly-by-wire systems are disabled when you're flying below a specific altitude, so you don't have to worry about the plane taking over your takeoff or approach. There's more info about the fly-by-wire system on the FlightGear wiki page. Flying realistic routes with this Boeing 787 is amazing. The instruments in the cockpit are great guides to seeing where you are and how the flight is progressing. There's even a real vertical navigation system that perfectly controls the plane's altitude on long flights. More about that on the wiki page. There's really actually no need to leave the cockpit view or open up the map on a well-planned 787 flight. In fact, you don't even have to open the route manager or the autopilot settings or anything like that. It can all be done in the 3D cockpit. So overall, this Boeing 787-8 can obviously be placed in the list of best airliners in FlightGear. Even though the exterior model and liveries might need some more attention, this plane is perfect for pilots who want to fly their plane without leaving the cockpit at all. I hope you enjoyed this video review and found it helpful. Be sure to check out the wiki page for the Boeing 787-8, and of course, don't forget to read February's FlightGear newsletter. I hope to see you back at the end of March when I'll be reviewing another great plane in FlightGear.